I never thought I'd sit across from my own sister, interviewing her for a position in my company. The same sister my parents threw me out for, claiming she deserved the future, not you. But that day finally came, and the look on Lydia's face when she realized who I was, worth every cold night I spent in my car. Growing up in our Portland suburban home, it was always clear who mattered. My parents, Mark and Teresa Reed, had a golden child, and it wasn't me. Lydia was everything they wanted, delicate, beautiful, and according to them, destined for greatness. Me? I was just the practical one. Harper, help your sister practice her dance routine, Mom would say while I was studying for AP exams. Harper, we need to cancel your science club. Lydia's recital is that weekend, Dad would announce, not even bothering to look sorry. When Lydia needed new ballet shoes, they appeared overnight. When I needed a graphing calculator for calculus, I worked extra shifts at the grocery store. That was just how things worked in our house. Despite everything, I excelled. While Lydia twirled in spotlights, I built my future in shadows. I graduated top of my class. The University of Washington acceptance letter arrived with a partial scholarship, my ticket out. I remember holding that letter, thinking finally, they'd see my worth. That night at dinner, Dad cleared his throat. Your mother and I need to discuss some important family matters with you girls tomorrow. Harper, since it's your birthday, will do it over a special dinner. I was turning 18, an adult at last. Maybe they'd finally acknowledge my hard work? Maybe they'd finally see me? I had no idea that special dinner would be the last meal I'd ever have in that house. Before I even tell you what happened next, let me ask you this. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted most? If you have, you'll feel this story deep in your soul. And if you know that kind of pain, hit subscribe. Not because it helps me, but because stories like this remind us that sometimes silence and strength are the best revenge. My birthday dinner. I still remember every detail. Mom made lasagna, not my favorite, but Lydia's. The table had one small gift wrapped in newspaper. Dad was wearing his serious discussion face. I should have known something was wrong when Mom didn't even bother with a cake. Harper, Dad began, folding his hands on the table. Your sister's dance academy in New York has accepted her early. I smiled, genuinely happy for her. That's awesome, Lydia. We can only afford to support one of you right now, he continued, cutting me off. And Lydia's future simply can't wait. The room went silent. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. What about my university? I worked for this. I've got scholarships. Partial ones, Mom interrupted, her voice cold as ice. And frankly, you'll survive. Lydia has potential that can't go to waste. I looked at my sister. She stared at her plate, twirling her fork in pasta, not meeting my eyes, not defending me, not saying a word. Then came the blow that shattered my world. We think it's best if you move out, Dad said flatly. You're legally an adult as of today. Lydia needs your room for her training equipment. My mother slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a $20 bill and a birthday card signed with just their names. Not even love, Mom and Dad. This should help until you get on your feet, she said. You're kicking me out? Tonight? My voice cracked. Where am I supposed to go? You're resourceful, Harper. Always have been. Dad's tone made it clear. Discussion over. That night, I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases. Lydia watched from my doorway. I'm sorry, she whispered. No, you're not, I replied, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. As I walked out the front door, that $20 bill burning in my pocket, my mother called out, Don't forget to return your house key. The door locked behind me with a final click. I stood on our front lawn in the dark, 18 years old with nowhere to go, discarded for a child they actually loved. That first night homeless, I slept on a park bench with my university acceptance letter clutched to my chest. Rain soaked through my jacket as I curled around my bags, terrified someone would steal the little I had left. The weeks that followed were a blur of desperation. I couch surfed with classmates until their parents started asking questions. When those options ran out, my car became my home, a beat-up Honda with a broken heater. Every morning, I'd wake up with windows frosted on the inside, my breath visible in the cold. I found work as a waitress at a 24-hour diner. The manager let me use the bathroom to wash up before shifts. Between serving tables, I'd apply for every scholarship and grant I could find. But without a permanent address, most applications were rejected. One night after a double shift, exhaustion and poor nutrition caught up with me. I collapsed in the diner's back alley, burning with fever. A coworker found me and called an ambulance, a kindness that left me with medical bills I couldn't pay. "Patient name?" the nurse asked when I regained consciousness. "Harper Reed. Emergency contact?" I stared at the ceiling. None. While recovering in that sterile hospital room, I scrolled through social media. There was Lydia, posing in front of the New York skyline with the caption, "Dreams come true when you have people who believe in you." Below it, my parents had commented, "So proud of our star. This is just the beginning." I threw my phone against the wall, cracking the screen, another expense I couldn't afford. When discharged, the hospital gave me pamphlets for homeless shelters. The social worker looked at me with pity. "You're so young. What about family?" "They made their choice," I whispered. That night in the shelter, surrounded by strangers with their own heartbreaking stories, something inside me hardened. The tears stopped flowing. The self-pity evaporated. If no one believed in me, I'd have to believe in myself with a ferocity that would burn down everything my parents thought they knew about me. I was done being discarded. I was done being the unwanted daughter. It was time to become someone they'd regret throwing away. 6 months after being kicked out, I was living in a shared apartment with 3 strangers, working 2 jobs, and spending every free minute at the public library. While other people my age were at college parties, I was teaching myself to code. "Library's closing in 10 minutes, the librarian would announce, and I'd beg for just 5 more minutes to finish a tutorial. One night, an older man noticed me frantically trying to complete my work before closing time. "You're here every night," he said, introducing himself as Tom, a retired software engineer. "What are you working on?" I showed him my attempts at building a simple inventory app. Instead of laughing, he sat down. "Your approach is clever," he said, pointing to my code. "Unconventional, but efficient." That conversation changed everything. Tom became my mentor, meeting me at the library 3 times a week. He brought me books, reviewed my projects, and eventually recommended me for a freelance gig, rebuilding a website for his friend's small business. My first paycheck, $300, felt like $1 million. I expanded to other small businesses, fixing their tech problems, designing simple apps. My clients liked that I explained things clearly and didn't talk down to them. With consistent work, I moved to a tiny studio apartment. It was barely larger than a closet, but it was mine, paid for with money I earned using my brain, not my parents' charity. One evening, working late on a project, I had an idea for an app that would help small colleges manage remote learning, something I wished I'd had access to when my education was derailed. I sketched the concept, staying up all night coding a rough prototype. By morning, exhausted but exhilarated, I knew this could be more than just another freelance job. This could be my company, my future. My revenge. I named my company Next Step Innovations. It started with just me and my laptop on a folding table in my studio apartment. My first real office? The corner booth of a coffee shop where the owner let me stay all day if I bought 2 cups. My remote learning platform caught the attention of a small community college in Idaho. Their feedback helped me refine it, making it more user-friendly for both students and professors. Word spread through academic circles. Then the pandemic hit. Suddenly, every school needed remote options. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. I hired my first employee, a brilliant coder I met at a tech meetup who believed in my vision. Then a second, a third. Within 18 months, we were 6 people crammed into a small office space, working around the clock. The turning point came when I pitched to a room of investors. I walked in wearing my only professional outfit, facing 5 men in expensive suits who barely looked up from their phones. "So, Ms. Reed," one said, glancing at my proposal, "this is interesting for someone with no formal education or background." I smiled, took a deep breath, and proceeded to explain every technical aspect of my platform in excruciating detail. Their expressions changed from dismissive to impressed in 20 minutes. 2 weeks later, we had our first major investment. A tech magazine ran a profile calling me an overnight success. They had no idea about the park bench, the hospital stay, the nights working until my fingers cramped. Nobody sees the struggle behind the success. They only see the results. You know what hurts the most? Not what they did, but that I still tried to make them proud after everything. If you've ever given people too many chances, you already understand this pain. Don't just scroll, subscribe. Join people who've been through it too, because you deserve stories that make you feel seen. 5 years after my parents threw me out, Next Step was thriving. We had 40 employees, offices in 2 cities, and contracts with universities across the country. I had become someone, the CEO my parents never thought I could be. That Tuesday started like any other. I was reviewing applications for our new marketing position when a name made my coffee cup freeze halfway to my lips. Lydia Reed. I blinked, certain I'd misread it. But there it was, printed in clean professional font. My sister was applying to work for me. For a moment, I wondered if it was coincidence, another Lydia Reed in Portland. But the attached photo confirmed it. My golden child sister, looking less polished than I remembered, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I scanned her resume, each line revealing the collapse of her dream. Under previous experience, she had written, "Former ballet instructor, seeking career transition after injury. No prestigious dance company, no New York spotlight, just injury and transition." Clinical words masking what must have been devastating failure. I leaned back, emotions battling inside me. Satisfaction that her charmed path had crumbled. Curiosity about what had happened. And underneath it all, a flicker of the hurt little girl who had stood on that lawn with $20 and nowhere to go. I should have forwarded her application to HR. I should have recused myself from the process. Instead, I picked up the phone. "Janet, move my 2 p.m. meeting. I'd like to personally interview the marketing candidates tomorrow." That night, I couldn't sleep. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would act. Professional, composed, unmoved by our history. I chose my outfit carefully, a tailored suit that screamed success. I styled my hair, applied makeup that highlighted my confidence. Tomorrow, Lydia would sit across from me, not knowing who awaited her. Tomorrow, she would learn what became of the daughter their parents threw away. I arrived at the office an hour early that morning. My assistant had arranged the conference room perfectly. Water pitcher, notepads, my company's branding visible on the wall behind my chair. A subtle power move. Ms. Reed, your first interview candidate is here, my assistant announced through the intercom. Send her in, I replied, straightening my posture. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face remained calm. The door opened, and there she was, Lydia. 5 years had changed her. The confident glow was gone, replaced by cautious anxiety. Her clothes were professional but inexpensive, her once perfect hair cut in a practical bob. She walked with a slight limp, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. "Good morning," she said politely. "I'm here to interview with Ms. Reed." I smiled, watching her eyes scan my face without recognition. "You are," a pause. Then it happened. That moment of dawning awareness I'd imagined for years. Her eyes widened, color drained from her face. Her portfolio nearly slipped from her fingers. "Harper?" Her voice was barely audible. "Yes," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Please have a seat. We are here to discuss your qualifications." She sat down awkwardly, shock still rippling across her features. I had no idea. Your company, I didn't realize it was yours." "Next Step Innovations," I said. "Founded it 5 years ago, but let's focus on why you're here today." I glanced at her resume. "Your application mentions marketing experience, but your background is in dance." Lydia nodded, struggling to regain composure. Her hands trembled as she opened her portfolio. "I've done some promotional work for the dance studio where I taught children," she stammered, "and I took some online courses in digital marketing." I nodded, scribbling notes, letting silence fill the room, making her squirm just as our parents had made me squirm whenever I asked for anything. "Tell me about your greatest professional achievement," I said, the question loaded with history. Lydia looked down, then back at me. In her eyes, I saw what I'd waited years to see, the recognition that I was no longer the discarded sister. I was the one with the power now. "My greatest achievement," Lydia repeated, buying time to think. I was accepted to the New York Ballet Academy." "That was 5 years ago," I noted, tapping my pen on her resume. "What happened after?" Her shoulders slumped slightly. 6 months in, I tore my ACL. Badly. The doctors said I'd never dance professionally again. I nodded, face neutral, despite the satisfaction spreading through my chest. "That must have been difficult." "It was devastating," she admitted. "Mom and Dad spent everything trying to fix it. Specialists, surgeries, experimental treatments, nothing worked." She gestured to her leg. "I can walk normally most days, but dancing is over." "And after your recovery?" I pressed. "I taught children for a while, but the studio closed during the pandemic. Dad's accounting firm went under about the same time. Mom and I moved back to Portland last year." Each revelation was a piece of a puzzle I hadn't known I was solving. Their perfect golden child had failed. Their business had collapsed. The future they sacrificed me for had evaporated. "Harper," Lydia said suddenly, her voice softer, "I'm sorry for what happened back then. I didn't know they'd actually kick you out." I looked at her steadily. "You didn't stop them either." She flinched, eyes dropping to her hands. "I was 17, scared, selfish." I said nothing, letting her sit in her discomfort. "You've done really well for yourself," she continued, a note of calculation entering her voice. "This is impressive. I always knew you were smart." I raised an eyebrow. She'd never said anything of the sort. "Maybe you could help me out a little?" she ventured. "I mean, family looks out for each other, right?" That word, family, hit me like a slap. After everything, she still had the nerve to invoke family ties when it benefited her. "Family," I repeated, the word tasting bitter. Let's talk about your actual qualifications for this position, shall we? She blinked, surprised by my redirect. In her eyes, I saw what she'd really come for. Not a job, but an easy way out of her problems. Just like our parents, she still saw me as a resource to be used, not a person to respect. 2 weeks after interviewing Lydia, a letter arrived at my office. The handwriting on the envelope was my mother's, neat, precise strokes I hadn't seen in 5 years. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. "We heard you humiliated your sister," it began. No greeting, no pleasantries. Typical. "Don't forget who raised you. You wouldn't have survived without us." I laughed out loud, startling my assistant. The irony was too perfect. They threw me out with $20, and now they had the nerve to claim credit for my success? I made a decision right then. It was time to see firsthand what had become of the family that discarded me. The next day, I drove to my childhood home. The contrast with my memories was jarring. The once pristine lawn was overgrown, paint peeled from the shutters. A foreclosure notice was taped to the front door. I parked across the street, considering whether to leave when the door opened. My mother stepped out, thinner than I remembered, hair streaked with gray. She froze when she saw me getting out of my car. "Harper, what are you doing here?" I walked toward her calmly. "I got your letter. Thought we should talk face to face." Her eyes darted to my car, a luxury model, then to my clothes, my watch, my confidence. "You've done well," she said, her voice hollow. "No thanks to you," I replied. "I heard Dad's business collapsed." She flinched. "The market changed. Clients left. We tried everything, including spending your savings on Lydia's failed career." Her face hardened. "She was supposed to be successful. That was the plan. And I wasn't in the plan at all, was I?" She had no answer for that. "We're losing the house next month," she finally said. "Your father is out looking for work right now." As we stood there, a delivery truck pulled up behind my car. The driver approached with a clipboard. "Delivery for Next Step Innovations, the new building on Pine Street?" My mother's eyes widened as I signed. "That's your company?" "Yes, I just purchased the office building across town," I said casually. "Dad's old building, actually. I'm converting it into a tech training center for disadvantaged youth." The color drained from her face as she realized what I'd become while they weren't looking. When I finally stood my ground, they called me heartless. But tell me, where were they when I was breaking? If you've ever had to choose peace over people, this channel is your space. Subscribe, not for me, but for every quiet soul who took their power back. A month after my visit to my parents' home, my assistant knocked on my office door. "Ms. Reed, your sister is here again. No appointment. She says it's important." I sighed, setting down my coffee. "Send her in." Lydia entered, clutching a new resume. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her posture defeated. "Harper," she whispered, "I just want a second chance." I gestured to the chair opposite my desk, studying her. Something had changed since our interview. The calculation in her eyes was gone, replaced by genuine desperation. "Mom told me you bought Dad's old building," she said. "They're moving in with my aunt next week. The bank took everything." I said nothing. "I've been rejected from 12 jobs," she continued. "Nobody wants a failed dancer with no experience. I even applied at fast food places." For a moment, I remembered my own desperation. The park bench, the diner job, washing my uniform in gas station bathrooms. The memory should have brought satisfaction, seeing her experience what I had. Instead, I felt hollow. "Why should I help you?" I asked quietly. "You stood by when they threw me away." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. and I've regretted it every day since. I was selfish and scared and stupid. I thought, she paused, I thought their love was conditional on my success. Now I know it was. That hit me harder than I expected. We had more in common than I wanted to admit. I leaned back in my chair, weighing my options. The revenge I'd imagined for years was right here, rejecting her, watching her leave broken. But something stopped me. I won't hire you at Next Step, I said firmly. That would be inappropriate. Her shoulders slumped. But, I continued, I know the marketing director at Horizon Tech. They need someone entry-level. I'll give you a referral on one condition. She looked up, hope flickering. You tell the truth. About everything. About what our parents did to me. About standing by. No more pretending we had a normal family. Lydia nodded slowly. I can do that. My revenge wasn't going to be her destruction. It would be her honesty and my freedom from the past. 2 months after I helped Lydia get the job at Horizon Tech, a local business magazine featured me in their 30 Under 30 issue. The article detailed my journey from homelessness to CEO, though I'd carefully avoided mentioning my family's role in my hardships. A week after publication, the gifts started arriving. First came an expensive watch with a note. Always proud of you. Love, Dad. The same father who hadn't bothered to check if I was alive for 5 years. Next came a cashmere sweater from my mother with a card saying, You always were such a smart girl. A dramatic revision of history, considering she once told me I was just average. The strategy was obvious. They'd seen my success in print, calculated my net worth, and decided I was worth acknowledging again. The final package contained a framed family photo from my high school graduation, our last happy moment together, with an invitation to dinner at Portland's most expensive restaurant. We have so much to catch up on, the note read. We've always believed in you. I placed the photo face down on my desk, remembering how 3 months after this picture was taken, I'd been sleeping in my car while battling pneumonia. That evening, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Harper, darling, her voice dripped with false warmth. We're so excited about dinner tomorrow. Your father has a wonderful business proposition for you. It would mean keeping things in the family, just as they should be. There it was, the real motive. I picked up the invitation and the gifts, placing them in a box. I wrote a single note. I built my life without your belief. I'll continue without your approval. I sent everything back via courier, except the family photo. That I kept, not as a reminder of fake happiness, but as evidence of how far I'd come from the girl who once desperately wanted their love. Lydia thrived at Horizon Tech. Her natural charm made her good at marketing, and her dance background gave her presentations a polished quality. We maintained a cautious distance, meeting occasionally for coffee, civil, but not close. Everything changed when I attended a networking event where Horizon's team was presenting. Our social media campaign increased engagement by 35%, Lydia was saying to a group of impressed executives. Then she added, I learned so much about perseverance from my sister. We built her first company together when she was just starting out. I nearly choked on my drink. This was news to me. Later that week, I heard from industry contacts that Lydia had been sharing stories about how she supported me through tough times and gave me my first break in tech. She was rewriting our history, casting herself as my champion rather than a bystander to my abandonment. I invited her to my office the next day. She arrived smiling, wearing new clothes bought with her Horizon paycheck. I hear you've been telling interesting stories, I said, once she sat down. Her smile faltered. Just building connections. Everyone loves a good sister success story. Except it's not true, I replied calmly. You weren't there when I slept in my car. You didn't help build my company. You didn't even check if I was alive for 5 years. People respond to family narratives, she shrugged. It's just marketing. It's lies, I corrected. And it stops now, or I call your boss and tell him exactly what kind of person he hired. Her face hardened. You'd really do that? Ruin my career? I gave you a second chance based on one condition: honesty. Break that and we're done, professionally and personally. Fine, she snapped. What should I say when people ask about my successful sister? The truth, that you're trying to rebuild a relationship that was broken by family choices. Nothing more. She nodded reluctantly, finally understanding. My success story wasn't hers to claim or exploit. Next Step Innovations was selected for the National Innovation Award, the tech industry's highest honor for startups. The ceremony would be held at a grand hotel in Seattle, with investors, competitors, and press in attendance. My team was ecstatic. I was terrified. As the CEO, I'd need to give an acceptance speech. Public speaking wasn't my fear. I'd done plenty of pitches and presentations. What scared me was being that visible. Success had been my private revenge. Now it would be broadcast nationally. The night of the ceremony, I stood backstage in a designer dress that cost more than my parents gave me when they threw me out. My hands shook slightly as I reviewed my notes. 5 minutes, Ms. Reed, an event coordinator whispered. When I walked onto the stage, the spotlights blinded me. Through the glare, I could make out hundreds of faces, industry giants, people who'd rejected my pitches years ago, and in the back row, 2 figures I instantly recognized despite the distance. My parents. They hadn't been invited. They must have seen the press release and bought tickets, showing up uninvited just like their gifts. For a second, I froze. Then I remembered who I was. Not their discarded daughter, but Harper Reed, CEO. Thank you for this honor, I began. Next Step's journey started in a public library, where I taught myself to code after becoming homeless at 18. The room went silent. When you have nothing, you learn what truly matters. For me, it was creating technology that gives others a chance they might not otherwise get. As I spoke, I kept my eyes on my parents. They seemed smaller than I remembered, diminished by time and failure. Success isn't just about talent or luck. Sometimes it's built on the foundation of rejection, when people who should believe in you don't, and you have to believe in yourself instead. After the ceremony, reporters surrounded me. One asked, "Your speech mentioned homelessness. How did you overcome such obstacles?" Before I could answer, my father pushed through the crowd. "We always knew she had potential," he said loudly. "That's our daughter. We pushed her to be independent early." The reporters turned to him eagerly, scenting a heartwarming family story. I stepped forward. "No," I said clearly. "That's not what happened." The cameras swung back to me as I told the truth. All of it, while my parents stood frozen in the spotlight they had craved. A month after the award ceremony, Next Step secured international contracts with universities in Europe and Asia. My team was expanding, and we needed larger headquarters. During a meeting about potential properties, my assistant interrupted. "Ms. Reed, your father is here. He says it's urgent." I hadn't spoken to him since publicly contradicting his version of events at the ceremony. "Send him in," I said, dismissing my team. He entered looking oddly confident for a man whose reputation I'd destroyed. He carried a leather portfolio and wore a new suit, trying to look successful despite his bankruptcy. "Harper," he said, taking a seat without waiting for permission. "I've been thinking about our family situation." "There is no family situation," I replied. He smiled thinly. Blood is thicker than water. We've had our differences, but it's time to put those behind us. He opened his portfolio and slid papers across my desk. I've started a new financial consulting firm. I want to partner with Next Step, family business, joint ownership. I glanced at the proposal. He wanted 40% ownership in exchange for bringing his client network and family expertise. The document mentioned nothing about his previous bankruptcy or our history. Why would I agree to this? I asked. Because I'm your father, he said, as if that explained everything. And because if you don't, I'll tell everyone how you abandoned your family when we needed you most. I stared at him, amazed by his audacity. You're threatening me? He shrugged. I prefer to call it negotiating. Your choice. Welcome us back and share your success, or face a public battle that will hurt your precious company's reputation. I stood up, walked to my office door, and opened it. Get out. Harper. I have security footage of this meeting. I have recordings of every conversation we've had since the award ceremony. Try to damage my reputation and I'll release all of it. His face reddened. You wouldn't dare. You taught me one valuable lesson, I said quietly. Never give power to people who don't respect you. Now leave before I call security. As he stormed out, I realized something important. My revenge wasn't in watching them suffer. It was in being strong enough to walk away. 7 years after being thrown out with $20, I stood on the corner of Maple Street, cutting the ribbon on the Reed Foundation's first youth center. This was the exact spot where I'd once parked my car to sleep, my lowest point, becoming my greatest purpose. The center would provide tech training, housing assistance, and mental health support for young people abandoned by their families. Every wall featured success stories of people who rebuilt their lives, reminding visitors that their current circumstances didn't define their future. Ms. Reed, the press is ready for your statement, my assistant whispered. Cameras flashed as I approached the microphone. Behind the reporters, I spotted Lydia standing quietly at the back. She'd taken a day off work to attend. Our relationship remained complicated, but it was built on truth now. Fragile, but honest. This center exists because 7 years ago, I learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find your purpose, I began. Every young person deserves someone who believes in them. If their families won't, then we will. After the ceremony, Lydia approached me. It's amazing what you've created, she said. Thank you for coming, I replied, meaning it. Have you heard from Mom and Dad? She asked. No, I said, and I don't expect to. She nodded, understanding the boundary I'd set. I'm sorry they couldn't see your worth. I'm sorry I didn't either back then. We stood in awkward silence until I asked about her work. Her eyes lit up as she described her recent promotion. She was building her own life now, separate from the expectations that had crushed us both. Later that evening, alone in my office, I gazed at the framed $20 bill hanging on my wall. Beneath it was the date I was thrown out and the words I'd added, the price of freedom. I never got the family I deserved growing up. But I'd built something better, a life where I determined my own worth. The revenge I'd once craved seemed hollow compared to what I'd created instead. Sometimes revenge isn't about payback, it's about peace. And if this story touched you, subscribe right now. Because somewhere out there, another person is watching in silence, needing a reminder that they're not alone, and your one click might help them find it.